Well, hello and welcome once again to the DCL podcast, where we're inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly.
Well, welcome back to the DCL podcast, your podcast for helping you and your family cruise smarter. And tonight we are doing a special episode where Dad is away and the kids get to play because it's me, Chris, here in Burbank, California. And I am being joined by our co-host, Christy. Christy, welcome.
Hi, thank you. It's so
Steve
fun.
is gone. We love doing episodes without Steve. Not that we don't like having episodes with Steve, but it does sort of feel like Dad's away and we get to say whatever we want.
It does. And he can't yell at us because we're taking too long or we're talking too much about a topic we care about.
That's true. Also, Steve likes to edit these episodes more because he gets to listen to them for the first time while he's editing. And I'm so excited about tonight's topic because we are covering the first official cruise back on the Disney Dream, which happened on August 9th. And we have a guest on the show who sailed on that special cruise.
I am so excited. Welcome to the show, Scott from Southern California.
Hi, happy to be here.
Yeah, for you guys, it's like normal daytime. You haven't even had your dinner yet. And for me, I'm like ready to crawl into my new sheets.
Yeah, Scott and I are basically, neighbors in a county of 16 million or something like that.
Details.
You do look familiar.
Well, welcome. I'm so excited to get to talk to another Southern Californian about Disney cruising. So actually, let's get your sort of cruising background so that we can sort of help guide this conversation. What is your history with cruising in general?
I've been on one cruise in like maybe the late 90s, the Carnival cruise, like 7-night Mexican cruise, and that's it.
Okay, so you went on one cruise 30 years ago, and now you're going on Carnival, very different product than the Disney Cruise Line, even today.
Yes.
And now you're going on a Disney cruise. So tell us a little bit about what caused you to pick a Disney cruise, why this cruise, were your plans changed at all with COVID? Just give us the whole rundown on this specific cruise.
So this actually kind of came from my mother-in-law. It was her big birthday celebration for 60. And she wanted to, take all of her grandkids on a Disney cruise. That's like was her dream. So she, foot the bill for all the kids and the parents could come along if they wanted or not. And, my wife and I were not going to let that opportunity pass.
Who would say, no to that? Nobody. That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it was quite impressive, quite awesome.
So what was the date of that sailing?
So we had kind of started planning this in late 2019. We booked the cruise in August of 2020. And as, COVID started, they started canceling cruises kind of like the, early March ones and then, April. And we were just kind of waiting. And, I was telling the family, like, if we were going to, actually do this, if it did happen to get canceled, like to put in our full payment so that you can get that 125% on a future booking. So we all put in the full payment early. Luckily, it was before they canceled it. So, they held on to our money for the almost 12 months difference between that cruise and this cruise. But you got a little bit of bonus. So, some people upgraded the room. Others got like a cruise credit. So that's kind of what we did. And we went out. They had rebooked, like for late in the year and then early this year. And we had done that a couple of times, but it got to the point that I was just kind of, giving up. And they happened to have booked this August 9th cruise, I think maybe the first quarter of 2021. And I was like, I'm not even going to do it. It's, I don't know if it's ever going to happen again. I just kind of a little burned out. And then 2 weeks before the cruise departed, they got a phone call saying that the cruise was actually on. And I talked to my wife. I'm like, you want to try? She's like, okay. And then we were able to call in and, get booked on the cruise.
This was like a 2 weeks before you sailed moment, where you weren't even planning on going on this cruise. It's sort of a sad story with a happy ending where you had so many cruises canceled that you just had given up on Disney Cruise Line. And then right at the last minute, it started to work out for you. And suddenly, next thing you know, you're 2 weeks away from flying to Florida and getting on a cruise ship for the first time in 30 years.
Yes. And, the way we are, or the way my wife is especially, like, she started packing for that cruise 9 months before we even left. So she was ready for this cruise at, almost any time. She's just like, open up the secret drawer and here's all the stuff that we were going to have in that cruise already ready to go. My son, who was going to be like 4 or 3 at the time, he's grown. Now he's 5. So we had to get a couple new shirts for him. It was really not that hard to book it 2 weeks before we left, other than making sure I was able to get time off of work.
And airlines.
Yeah. So
you probably could have got some cheaper airline tickets if you had booked not 2 weeks before. But besides
for sure. I mean, there was a premium in even, I'm sure, the cruise cost and the airlines. But they hadn't booked their airlines either, just because they had been, bit a couple of times. So in the end, the whole family paid about the same for the airlines. But again, had we booked in advance, it would have saved us some money. So, it was worth it.
Who all ended up on the sailing?
So it was my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, my wife, my brother and sister-in-law. They have 3 kids, and they are 3, 7, and 10-ish. And then my 2 boys, who are 5 and 14, and my wife.
Those are fun ages to cruise for your kids. 14 is where it's like you get to be on a cruise ship and like you can leave and go wherever you want because your parents know you're probably safe. And then 5 is a fun age because the kids clubs are like ripe for a 5-year-old. They're like perfect in that age group.
I think my son, who was the 5-year-old, it was his wheelhouse. He was just, I couldn't believe that, because it's a time change for us, right? So we flew in the day before we left. So that was a little bit hard waking up early, but he was a champ. Like that first day, I think that we were down to have breakfast by 9 a.m., which would have been 6 a.m. And he stayed up till 11:30 p.m. just going nonstop. And then, the next day again, and, he wanted to do this, he wanted to do that. So I was telling him, do you want to do this? He's like, yeah. So we'd go run to the pool or do the Mickey Mouse water slide. He was a little too short for the aqueduct. So he didn't get to do that. He was a little bummed about that, but I told him next time. So he's like, wait, next time? And I was like, well, there'll be a next time probably.
I mean, after all, you're now officially a member of the Castaway Club, whether you want to be or not.
Yeah, I did see that. That was kind of funny.
Yeah, you're silver level already.
Already, skip the bronze.
Hey, it's good. You get free gifts the next time you go, or included.
Yeah.
Okay, so 11 people. You only registered 2 weeks ago. So I'm assuming your port arrival time was different than the rest of your families?
So the port arrival time we got was actually 15 minutes before theirs.
What?
So yeah. So I don't know if these numbers are real, but I heard that there was about 1,400 to 1,500 people on the boat. Normally, I think it's 4,050 for the Dream.
Yeah, it can be like 3,500 to 4,000 or something like that around those numbers, depending on occupancy and stuff. I did hear the same thing for the numbers for your cruise.
Yeah, those numbers sound like what we've been hearing as well. So 1,500 folks is a lot less than normally would be arriving at the Dream in the morning to debark or embark.
They were very strict about the port arrival time. So we had rented a car to get from the airport because we were staying in Port Canaveral. And then there was a drop-off point in the Port Canaveral area for our car rental. And
what company did you rent with?
Enterprise.
So they're still open because we understand Hertz is closed. So we're just trying to keep a tally of who's open and who's closed over in Port Canaveral these days.
So in Port Canaveral, it's one building with all the desks. They were working multiple desks, and this was like their first official day back.
Okay.
So it could have changed. There was literally only 3 cars in the parking lot when we got on the shuttle over to the cruise line, and they were all going to the Disney cruise, obviously. But we left. So I believe that all 3 of the parties that were together had a 1:15
boarding time,
port arrival time.
Mm-hmm.
And we got there at 1:05, and they were like, no. By the time we actually got up to like the drop off point, it was like, there was maybe like 7 minutes left until 1:15, and the woman wouldn't let the bus driver park. And he's like, ma'am, what do I do? And she's like, just please go around. So the bus driver from Enterprise was excellent. He, went around, found a little spot. It got to be like 1:14. He's like, all right, we're going for it. And then the same exact thing happened with my sister-in-law because they rented a vehicle as well. So they were drop off. They didn't park in the garage because I heard that they were a little bit more strict in the garage. Like they wouldn't let you into the garage because like you can start the process of screening inside the garage. So I told them, I said, don't bother coming until 1:30. That you're, we're turning people away. I kind of get it because the whole social distancing, they don't want everybody coming at once. And not like we didn't have a choice, but we didn't want to be, miss the shuttle. They got us over there and have to wait like 45 minutes in the Enterprise terminal or Enterprise waiting area. I think that as throughout the day, they got a little bit better and people were kind of reading the, blogs or the Facebook page and understanding about the time to get there. I'm not 100% sure, but I think concierge checked in at 12:30 and like 1:00 was one of the earlier check-ins that you could do. So, we were pretty early on that list of checking in.
We recently had an episode up from Megan with DCL Cruise Nerd. She talked a lot about arriving at the port and dealing with that. But so I would tell people to go back and listen to episode 221 with Megan from the DCL Cruise Nerd, where she talked about her test cruise. They followed the exact same procedures for arrival. However, Megan did not have anybody under the age of 12, so anybody unvaccinated with her. So I'd like to get the perspective of arriving with children at the port because we don't have that arrival situation already worked out. So let's spend a second talking about that, but focus on the unvaccinated kids.
When we arrived, we dropped off the bags and we had all the kids that were under 12 needed to get a COVID screening. You had to get one 24 hours before and up to 5 days and come back with a negative result. And that had to be loaded into your Safe Passage portal. And that was really easy to do. We were able to scan our vaccination cards for my wife and I and my stepson. And those all went in, were approved. And then my youngest son, his was just always pending, as we got closer to the cruise date. And we went to a facility, got his PCR test, photocopied the results, uploaded it to the Safe Passage portal website. In probably 5 to 10 minutes, they had given us an update that was emailed back to me that he was clear to travel. It's called Clear to Travel. So then when we arrived, you drop off your bags, tell them your stateroom, and then they walk you to an area where you now use this QR code that the Safe Passage portal gives you. And that's kind of how they identify you. And then they say, okay, you've been approved to go, but you need to get a swab. So they walk you into like maybe a like 10 by 10 area. And they have, I don't necessarily know if it's a nurse, but a health staff worker there. And you administer the test to your own child.
Oh, I hate that.
It was a little tough. My brother-in-law, he is a fireman, so he's done it a few times. I did it for my son, and I just kind of, read the instructions, and they're very, very helpful.
But then you have to read your own instructions?
Well, it's right there. They
okay, that bugs me though. Just in case anybody's wondering.
It was something that I didn't expect. So I didn't know about it, but it's very simple. It's a Q-tip swab to the back of the nostril. No.
So I have to pay $100, or no, Disney pays, because if they're under 12, you don't have to pay.
Yes.
But $100 to give my own kid a test. So like if you were one of the unvaccinated people that showed up and have to do that test yourself, you have to pay for it if you're over 12.
Correct.
So you have to give yourself the test and pay for it. Excellent.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Understand.
And then whatever time you're done with that part, and then you kind of, put it in the bag and give it to them or whatever. Then they take you to, there's like 4 or 5 designated tents, and they're probably about the size of a basketball court, and they're enclosed. And I think it was A, B, C, D, maybe E, F. I'm not sure. We were in like tent C, and you go inside that tent and you wait. And in that tent, they have a computer screen or a TV screen, and they will pop up with the results of like clear to travel at that point. So the one thing about that tent is like, it was hot, we're, August, and they did have air conditioning in there, but it was having a tough time keeping up. I mean, it was a warm day.
Do the people that drove themselves to the port, can they just go back to their car, or do they have to wait in the tent too?
I don't know that answer, but I kind of feel like everybody was coming out of the garage. So I think that they wanted them waiting in the tent because they wanted everybody, like once you got the test, stay here in this area. And it was about 40 minutes it took for us to get our results. And we were shot an email and we were all clear to travel, obviously.
It's what the other cruise lines have been doing as well. They've been emailing results to people, and folks just sort of keep refreshing their email, waiting for that result to come through.
Although on Royal, didn't it take like 15 minutes or something for people, like maybe a half an hour for some of our other listeners? But somebody also posted, because we have somebody cruising right now. I don't know when this episode's going to air, but we have somebody cruising right now who said that some of the people indicated it took up to 2 hours to get the results. So people just need to be prepared, and probably if you have children for at least a while, eat lunch before you get on the ship, because
and definitely have water and snacks inside that tent because it was warm, and like you could go outside, but it's less
warmer.
Yeah,
it's Florida.
It's Florida, right? So it wasn't terrible. Like I feel like maybe if they had like TVs playing like Disney movies, like it'd be a little bit more entertaining. Like I thought I had talked to a Disney Cruise Line representative online asking exactly how long they thought this was going to take. And they said 5 to 15 minutes. And then once I got there, they said an hour. Oh. So I was like, okay, there was a little bit disconnect. Again, we got there at a pretty busy time. It was the start of by 1:30, by the time we all got shuffled out, there was a lot of people. When I say a lot of people, not a lot of people like a normal Disney day, but more than just like, oh, there's only 40 people over here. They filled up each of these tents. So that was the one thing that we kind of weren't prepared for, is having like food and snacks for these kids. And they were you could see the boat right outside the door. So they were getting very anxious.
I would be anxious, wouldn't you, Chris? Like, I want to get my vacation started.
Yeah, it definitely. So did they let you into the cruise building?
No, you were not allowed to go into the cruise building. So this was outside, adjacent to the parking lot in what I would think is like an uncovered parking lot. So they have the parking structure, and I think this was part of the parking lot where they built these temporary structures.
But then eventually you go into the cruise building after you've gotten your clear test.
Correct. As soon as you get your clear, then you go through, you do all your documentation. I think you guys have seen the little table, or not table, little like podium with the plexiglass in front of it that you show your stuff to. You got to pull down your mask to show your face.
Yep, we did cover a lot of this with Megan, again, in episode 221. So we would just have listeners probably go back to listen to that. So let's shoot you forward a little bit, because there's so many people, and this is a trip report with kids. So I want to make sure we get the stuff in. What was that experience like with you guys, first time on a Disney cruise with all of your family? Did you get to all enter together, all 11 of you?
The way they did it is they had, I'm sure you've seen, they have these like different areas marked in that little 3-story atrium area. And we all kind of got announced together. So they announced, the last names of everybody. And then, we kind of split up into 2 little dots that you stand on, but we all did get to enter together, and we all kind of watched that little mini show that they do in the atrium with Mickey and Minnie coming out and the cast members, like, singing along. So that was nice. I mean, the kids were just buzzed at that point. Like, this was the first time they crossed through that little gantry walkway, and they like look in, and it's like 3 stories tall, and you have this giant chandelier, and there's Donald Duck and statue, and here comes Mickey and Minnie down the thing. Disney does it right. Even I was excited, right? I'm still getting goosebumps talking about it right now, right? Like, it was a lot of fun for us, and all the kids love this type of thing, right? They like Disney, they love Mickey Mouse. So the first time was very, very exciting for all of us. So they kept that magic alive. Sure, we were wearing masks. Sure, we were socially distanced. It still was magical.
That is not something that used to happen on a Disney cruise ship when you entered. When you entered, they would announce your family, they would clap for you, and then you would just go and start exploring the ship. But they're doing this because what used to happen is something they called the sail away party. And because they're not doing a sail away party anymore, and in fact, from all the reports we've heard, sail away hasn't really started until like 7 at night sometimes, like pretty late, which typically on a past Disney cruise, it was always sailing right at 4, pulled
4,
away.
4:30. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pulling out of the port, and they would blow the ship's horn to announce that they were sailing, and it was that sort of vibe. But there was not a fun little dance show right when you got on. So I don't know, maybe this is something that they keep. People seem to really like it.
I mean, you know me, Chris, I don't know that I've ever once been in 10 cruises to the sail away party. Crowds of people out again, in a crowd, for me, that has never been my thing. I didn't need COVID to stay away from people. I was doing that all along. And I think we were always unpacking and stuff. So this is so much better that I get a little tiny party with Mickey and Minnie, Captain Minnie, and 5 other families. This is a dream.
It was quite busy still at 4:00 because we knew kind of, I'd read about like their normal departure times. And I was like, there was a lot of people still down there, a lot of people still walking across the, not jetway, but for lack of a better
the gangway.
term. The gangway, yes.
Because there's boarding times, there's port arrival times as late as 2:30, I think, or 2:45. And so if it takes an hour and you have to go through security still, and you have to drop your bags and you have to park, they're not going to be boarded until 4:00. Like I'm planning on boarding around 4 on my next Disney cruise, which we have coming up soon, because I know we have a later port arrival time and everything's just going to take a while.
What time were you on the ship?
I would say that we were on the ship by 2:33-ish.
And after they did their little special dance for you, what did you do first? Your rooms probably wouldn't have been ready yet by that point. So
we all split up, and my sister-in-law went right to her room and was able to get into her room right away. And now that I'm remembering that, I remember seeing her timestamp on her photo was like 3:20 or 3:15. So we went down and explored the kids club. So you could do a tour then, and also you could do a tour on the first or second day at Castaway Cay, which is the only times that they had a second tour date where the adults were allowed to go in. And I wanted to see the Millennium Falcon cockpit. I was like, I need to get in there. I don't care if my kid doesn't want to go. We're going. And he ran right up to it, hit that thing in the hyperspace. So we did like a little tour around the ship, kind of just walking around. And then we all met up again around maybe 6:30 or so up on the top deck and, checked out the pool, walked off. And then all of a sudden we felt like we were moving and heard the horns going.
Isn't that the best? Aren't those horns the best? I mean, they literally are the best horns at sea.
So my son is just infatuated with them. We found a video in December of like a year and a half ago, and he has probably watched that thing 5,000 times. He knows what order they're in. He knows what songs. And like, he was so excited. Like we were up on the top front of the boat and he was so excited about that. Like he was just like, oh, I know this song. Oh, It's a Small World. Oh, Pirate's Life for Me. Like it was very exciting.
So, and you got to hear then the horn off between the fantasy and the dream then, since you were on the deck.
Correct. So that took me a minute to understand. I'm like, are those horns facing backwards and the other horns facing forwards? And then I realized, oh, it's the other boat that are, they're battling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So some of the crew from the fantasy posted the horn battle, which I think is just, I love like, that's the stuff, the Disney magic stuff that, right, just makes us all just continue to love everything about Disney. Okay. So we can get past, we can get past swabbing our own noses and our own children's noses and, think of the horn battles. So you guys had late dining then?
No, we had early dining.
Oh, well,
yes.
Wait, how did you go?
So sorry. We actually had dinner and then we went up. Yeah, you are right. We had dinner before we went down. I totally forgot about that. We had dinner at the Royal Palace the first night and then we went up. That's how we were all together again.
You met up for dinner. So you had dinner at Royal Palace. What was your dining rotation? Do you remember?
Yes. So it was Royal Palace, Animators, and then Enchanted Garden.
So you got to do Animators twice. I mean, there are people who would...
That's my favorite.
Who would request that specifically.
That's what we did. I said, we have, kids in here and I would love to do Animators Palette twice. And they said, okay, so we'll see what we can do. And then they made it happen.
You booked last minute.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So,
and we put our parties together last minute too. So like, it was like 4, 4, and 3. And I was like, connected them, 2 weeks before.
Oh, because they hadn't done that already.
Well, no, because we weren't going. Right. So yeah, right. I guess it would have been 8 for them.
Okay. Did you originally get first seating or did they have to wait list you for first?
I got first seating, no problem. Yeah.
Wow.
The day I booked it.
That's a thing that would never happen 2 weeks before a cruise, except there were only 1,500 people on this cruise. So you basically were able to get a lot of good stuff.
There was one meal that it was the breakfast on debarkment day. Wow. We had, we were a table of 11 and we were the early seating and we were just sitting there and talking and having a good time. And coming up to the second seating, they just put another table next to us, not next to us, but in the same section that we were for the other 11 party that was coming in there at 8:30. So that was one really nice advantage, was that the restaurants were not crowded at all.
Oh, that is such a dream.
It's a rarity on a Disney cruise. Like before the pandemic, I don't think any of us had really experienced that type of availability, though it makes sense. 1,500 people on a ship of that size is definitely a nice perk.
I don't know how they do this with a full ship, because at Castaway Cay, we were having lunch, and the lunch area was probably like 70% filled.
Because there's 2 lunch areas.
Yes, it was the one.
Cookies 2.
Cookies 1 and Cookies 2. So
I don't know.
Were both cookies open? They probably didn't open both cookies. Or did they still?
I think they were both open. We only visited one of them, so I don't know which one we were at.
You were at Cookies 2, I'm guessing. The reason I say that is because almost everybody goes to Cookies 2, but Cookies 1 is where the allergy orders are. So I was curious if they were still going to have that be open. Lake and Katie from MouseGen are actually cruising as we're recording, and they reported that there's actually quite a few less crew on the island that typically are there. So I was curious if they were just going to run one last kitchen area, but it would make sense because they still have to feed the allergy people that they'd keep that open. Okay. So you thought that Cookies 2 was a bit crowded.
Well, I was wondering how they would do this with like 4 times the amount of people. It wasn't crowded because it was very spaced out. Again, like they would move these tables far away from each other. It wasn't like you were packed in there at sardines at all. It was very spaced out and you still had room. And I just was like, we are so lucky to be on this cruise right now. Sure, there's some like discomforts of wearing a mask. If you were outdoors, they didn't really enforce it. It was only when you were indoors and not seated for dinner. And, the kids got used to it. We got used to it. It was really nice. I don't know if I could have done it if you had to wear the mask outdoors, because it was hot and definitely be uncomfortable. Even the pool, were a little weird because they had a limit of how many people could be in there. And then there was almost like a 5-minute time limit of being in the pool. And they would ask those people to get out. I felt like it was a little bit shorter than that.
Okay.
Because we were waiting on the smaller pool, the Mickey pool, I believe. And he was like, okay, in 5 minutes, just come back. We're gonna move these people out. And I said, okay. And I heard him whistle, and then my son was over it at that time. So, but like he rode the Mickey Mouse water slide nonstop. Like he would get off, just jump back onto the stairs. They had them queued along the way. So like sometimes there'd be kids waiting, but 75% of the time there was no kids waiting for the slide. He rode that thing like in an hour. He probably rode it 25 times. And that is not an exaggeration. He loved it. Like he would get off bouncing and be so happy and run back up again.
I love that.
I've never been on that slide because it's not made for adults.
It's not. Yeah, I'm a little too little, too big.
Especially giant adults.
Yeah, but they have slides that are basically just like that at hotels all over Disney World and Disneyland, and you can ride those ones. But I digress. We still get to ride on the Aqua Duck and the Aqua Dunk, and whatever they're going to call the new Mickey Mouse one.
The first night I rode the Aqueduct, and there was 2 people in front of me. In the highlight of the day, I would say that the line was maybe half an hour. Like that was the most I ever saw it.
Which can happen. Out at sea, I've seen it be even longer on sea days. Okay. This sort of leads us naturally towards entertainment and onboard activities. Why don't we start with onboard activities? One of the things that you did, obviously, was the water slides. What else did you do in terms of onboard activities? You had one sea day. How was it?
So we did the Believe show and the kids club. The 4 of the kids got to go together to the kids clubs. The first at sea day was a 2.5 hour kids club experience, and all the other days were only an hour and a half. So that was a little bit difficult for like the adults to be able to do anything. Like, by the time you drop off the kids and you get to somewhere to have a drink or relax or something, it's like, okay, time to get back and go pick up the kids.
And did they allow you to extend it at all, or are they stuck to that?
No. So they stuck to that. And they had a process. You dropped them off in one section, and they did like this, here, they were to this section, and they moved. They were very timed, and they were very well punctual about like, it's, 1:30 now, your kid is done because we've done all these activities, and then they're ready to come out. You couldn't before the cruise, but on the cruise, you could actually book multiple times per day. but before the cruise, you cannot. You can only do one per day. And their check-in process, like it was a little bit of a struggle. There were 2 days. It took me 20 minutes to check in, the 4 kids. And I think that was possibly the cast member was just having a little bit of trouble, because other days it was like that. And it had nothing to do with the amount of people waiting. It just, they were talking, it was a new system and they're kind of getting used to the way to do it. And this, this whole time limit, they had to check to make sure that you're in the right time to be there. And then, they got set with the cast member, and there was anywhere from 4 to 10 kids in my family's group. And 4 being the 4 of them, that would be the minimum, and 10 being the maximum, from what my niece told me. And then they had different activities.
Only 10 kids total at the kids club?
10 kids in a group. So like if your time was 1 o'clock, that only had 10. And like the next time was like 1:15. So they were very staggered. They kept them separate, which, I thought was great, because I didn't really, you're not allowed in there, right? So I have no control of what's going on. They all had a great time. Like they made slime one day. Captain Hook came in one day. Jesse was there another day. Like, this entertainment value you're definitely paying for, but they do a good job of keeping the kids entertained. I just wish that it was a little bit longer, because I'm sure that the kids would want to stay longer.
I think, this part of this is going to be cruising early in the re-cruising, right? Like they're figuring it out, because in the olden days, we didn't have to register. You just dropped them off and you picked them up whenever you or they wanted. So did
they ever have capacity limits before?
It's real crowded and real crazy in there.
They didn't have capacity limits, but they also didn't. I mean, I'm sure there are capacity
I'm sure
limits.
there were.
Every room has a capacity room, but the old rule was mostly just that the kids could choose to do organized things in there, or they could choose to do whatever they wanted. And it sounds like what you're describing is more like, okay, kids, now it's time to go do this thing. And now we're going to go do this thing, which makes sense because of social distancing. And the kids in the kids clubs, did they have to wear masks, I'm assuming?
Yes, they did.
Yeah. So they're still being really cautious. And it makes sense, right? Because these ships are sailing out of Florida. Florida has like 1 in 5 new cases of COVID. And the cruise industry is considered to be a very risky industry for the pandemic. So I think these sorts of things are here to stay for a bit. I don't know how long, but at least for a while. And you just happened to be on a cruise where they were heavily testing all of these concepts to see if they worked. And I bet you your end of cruise survey was very valuable to the cruise staff, because they're trying so many things really for, the first or second time. So you said you saw Believe, the show Believe.
I think that's what it was called.
Yeah, no, that's a real
right.
Disney Cruise Line show.
Okay,
yeah.
And then the rest of the family also watched the Beauty and the Beast one.
Beauty and the Beast.
How did they do seating in the theater?
That was kind of tough. Like we were a large party, so we kind of got off to one side of the stage, and they had every other row blocked off, and they were having probably like 2 to 3 seats in between parties. We kind of got like not the most optimal seat. Again, our fault. We went late to the show, and there's a lot of us, but kids don't want to sit 20 minutes in a theater that nothing is happening. So it worked out fine. The fact that they have 2 shows a night kind of helps, right? You have your early seating and late seating dinner, so you have the opposite for your show times. But then we also went to see the Jungle Cruise movie. We came in pretty late, I would say, to that, and we got a great seat. So, just depending on when you went, that was like an afternoon. I believe that was like noon that we saw that movie. But they do a really good job of keeping everybody separated. One of the things, though, like that my wife mentioned is like, it was hard to meet friends. That was the one thing. Like the staff was awesome. Like staff, every single person you passed, hi, how you doing? Having a good morning, blah, blah, blah. Like our wait staff for the restaurants, like we're tremendous. Like my wife has friended one of the guys on Facebook now. Like he like these guys were so nice. And everybody was so happy to be back. Like the cruise director, he was like, I have been waiting so long to say this. He's like, we're back. And like that, like watching that on the TV, like we're like, oh, tears freaking out our tissues. But like,
yeah, I would have cried. I'm crying just hearing it. So for real.
But like person to person interaction was, really difficult because you don't want to I don't want to make anybody else feel uncomfortable. And they've kept everybody so separate that you almost don't want to cross into those circles. So that was the one thing that was a little weird. Like whereas before even like going to Disney parks or Walt Disney World, like you stand in line with somebody for like 20 minutes and next thing you know, you're like, you found out their whole story, right? It was hard to do that. We talked to people, waiting for an elevator, but the whole like kind of relationship building that you do, since it's only your party at a dinner table, right? Where that used to be the place to,
at
meet
least
up.
you have 11 of you.
Right. Right. There was a couple right behind us. There was only 2 of them. Right. So they were, dining with each other the whole time. Right. Like I'm sure my wife would get tired of me spending the whole cruise, just me and her. She's like, I need to meet somebody else. But the staff is great. Like every place we went, every person is so nice and they seem so happy to be back, cruising. So there was that aspect of like, you didn't get the interaction to strangers, which we're very family. So that was kind of a drawback, I guess you could say.
That would be a different experience than probably you will find in the future. Did you do any things like trivia or the game shows or any of those types of onboard activities?
So we actually did not. We were pretty much running around. We did, what was the one thing that we did? The Midship Mouse Detective. So
Midship Detective Agency, yeah.
Yes, the kids loved it, that. And that was fun. And that was like walking all over the ship for an hour and a half. We went by and saw, like I did see the game shows and, went into the bars if they're happening or whatever. And they were definitely spread out, but it didn't seem like a lot of people attended that. Again, 1,500 people on the boat, not a lot of people to pick to go to these things. A lot of people seem to go to the shows and the movies, because there was multiple movies. And then the fireworks, they put these dot stickers everywhere, and you kind of were guided to an area where you stand, you kind of stay on your dot, and then they do the fireworks, and then they have like a little dance party after, and people kind of are still staying in their area. So that was probably the closest to the deck party that they had.
That sounds similar to a deck party.
But having the space also, to me, again, sounds like a dream.
It was nice. We had a great view of the fireworks. And then there's 2 nights of fireworks. They break them up based on when your seating is.
Oh, okay. So all of first seating goes one night and second seating goes the next night.
And depending on what restaurant you're at, they tell you what section of the ship to go.
Oh.
Yes. Like, so we were at first seating, Animator's Palette. So we went aft the first night. And they didn't really check. So it was kind of like on your honor. They just wanted to spread people out, right? So They didn't want everybody going to the back of the ship for the first night of fireworks. And then the second night, we had a veranda. So we watched it from the veranda. We knew which side of the ship to be on when we booked. Yeah, that was another thing I was able to ask, could I be on the starboard side of the ship for the fireworks? And they had no problem giving me that room.
Nice.
Speaking of, what type of room were you in? You had a veranda room on the starboard side?
I believe so. Yeah, it was the deluxe ocean view stateroom with veranda, I believe it's called.
So it was not a family veranda. It was a deluxe veranda.
I believe so.
So you had your 5-year-old in the pull down and your 14-year-old in the couch bed?
So actually the 14-year-old was with the grandparents and it was just the 5-year-old on the couch.
Okay. So you spread it out a bit so that there weren't more than 3 people in each of those rooms.
Well, yeah, they had 4. Those 2 had 4 because, everyone wanted to sleep with the grandparents, right? So we kept the youngest and my sister-in-law and brother-in-law had their 2 youngest in their room as well. And we actually had an adjoining room.
Oh, that's cool. Did you open up the veranda to one another?
They did.
This is going to be a pivot back towards dining. Part of the old experience was you could order room service to your room and eat in your room. Did you ever order room service, or have they changed the rules around room service?
We did order room service a couple times. One of the times where my son was in the kids club, we got some cheese to go with the 4 bottles of wine that we brought in.
Nice.
So it's kind of interesting the way that they do the room service. They'll knock on your door and they'll have the little cart pushed all the way up against your stateroom door. You open it and you just pull the tray off and take it in the room. Now, they're very helpful. They reach in and try to hold that door open, but even on that cruise, those doors are heavy. So that was kind of fun trying to, not spill anything. And then we ordered one 11:30 at night. We're like, I feel like some pizza and French fries. So we just had some random. And then we got cookies. You can get the warm chocolate chip cookies and the coffee when we did the fireworks on the veranda.
Oh,
Awesome.
Nice.
I'm glad to hear that room service is still a thing, even if you have to bring it in yourself.
I have a very important question. Did you order Mickey bars at all through room service?
Yes, for sure.
So, and it still exists. That's fantastic.
It still exists. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think you could even get them at the restaurant too. The restaurants.
Yes, you can. And a pro tip for our listeners, you can get them in this dining room. So any of the sit-down restaurants, if you want them to be with sprinkles and chocolate sauce, you just say, I'd like a Mickey bar. If you want it to not have sprinkles and chocolate sauce, like my family, then just ask for it in the wrapper, even at the sit-down restaurants. And they will leave it in the wrapper and they will deliver it that way. And it will not have sprinkles and chocolate sauce on it. Because not
Pro
everybody
tip from
likes,
Christy.
not everybody likes sprinkles and chocolate sauce.
They're just trying to fancy up something that is basically a commercial product.
The Mickey bar is pretty much perfection. It does not need to be fancied up. It does not need to be dressed up. It is perfection in the way that it is served.
All my wife could not do is talk about the soft serve ice cream that you can get up, on the pool deck. And we were trying them all. Again, you don't do anything yourself. They have a person at every station. I think you guys probably have been over this. Like, you don't get your own water, you don't get your own drinks, and they before you go into the restaurants, they're asking you to wash your hands. They put these hand wash stations out, and they ask you to. If they don't have that, they have sanitized stations. So wasn't hating that. I mean, even without COVID, that's not a bad idea. Like,
right,
try to get my kids to wash their hands right before they eat. They've been touching everything. So
clean hands is a good thing.
It is a good thing. So you had the food delivered to your room. Can you tell us just about your dining experience in terms of how did you find the quality of the food in the main dining rooms? Was there anything that you liked or didn't like?
I heard that, people were like meh about the food, but it was fine. And again, the staff is so good. They find out what drinks you like right away. Then, they knew that my wife and I drink wine with at dinner. The next day, there was a wine glass out in front of it. My father-in-law enjoys coffee at dinner. They would pour the coffee for him the second through the rest of the night. They did the Mickey Mouse shaped ketchup on the plate. So they did a very good. The food quality was I would not bat an eye at anything. There was one night I had 2 dinners. I want that seafood, but I also want the steak, just the steak. And they're like, no problem. We can bring it out to you. So I had, 2 dinners that night. That was also the pizza and French fry night that night. I don't know what happened.
Sounds like you were cruising right.
Yeah.
The cruise director kept saying, if you see it, eat it.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So typically pre-pandemic, pre-coronavirus, there was a pirate night on one night of your cruise. How did that, and that's typically the night of the fireworks. Now you have fireworks 2 nights. So how did the whole pirate night exchange go?
So pirate night was on our 3rd night of dining, and it was basically no pirate party. There were still people who dressed up, but we didn't really make the effort because there wasn't anything other special. The cast members and the restaurant dressed up, and then the characters around the ship dressed up, and then they kind of gave everybody a bandana. You had a special menu, and the kids had it shaped like a pirate hat. But that was kind of it. It was very, very low-key pirate night compared to the things that I've seen.
Well, again, crowds, blah, blah, blah. I guess that makes sense. We have to accept the new wave for a while. So
they did have some photo opportunities where they had a pirate background that you could still take, with your kids and stuff like that.
So photo opportunities the whole week. That reminds me. So could you still get family pictures in the atrium and stuff like that at various times?
You could. You had to make sure that you had the person there. Now, it was kind of weird. The first day, no masks were coming off by anybody in the photos. Whether or not, even though you were socially distanced from the character behind you, they really were like, oh, keep your mask on. But then the second day, they kind of, I don't know if they realized how well they were doing with keeping everybody distant, and they would move the line back, where people were going to the next, the next family was going to take a picture, and they put up a table or not necessarily a table, but they put a little area where you could put your mask and your stuff. So that, once that kind of started happening, then you were allowed to take pictures at different times in the atrium without your mask on. But then some characters still kind of required it depending on where you were.
Okay. So character interaction still occurred. It just, I have seen some pictures. There was roped off area and you were maybe a little bit further away from the character. Could you still talk to the character and things like that?
Yes. For the speaking characters, they definitely did interact and talk with you. And they did a great job with the kids and they would, notice something about them. The non-speaking characters, they had a cast member there that was a friend of Captain Hook that would kind of be the voice of Captain Hook. So that was still the same, but it was, you were like 4 or 5 feet away. You couldn't get close. You couldn't touch them. We didn't even bother bringing the autograph books. So there still was that.
So
That
could the
makes
kids
sense.
though still like talk to the characters? Like they could still say, "Hi, Mickey, I missed you," stuff like that.
Yes, they could talk to them, and the chaperone would then talk for the non-speaking characters, and then like the princesses would talk, and the other characters that did speak were talking to you. So that was kind of cool.
Well, that's good. Because right now, even at Walt Disney World, you're not close enough to be able to engage. There's not even characters, you have to they're on the train station and things like that. And so
like at Castaway Cay, there seem to be a lot less characters than I've seen in other people's book or photos and stuff like that. But like one day we were walking out and surprise, there's Jack Sparrow just, sitting on the side, and, people were walking right by him, and he was like, "Hello, if you find my treasure," he's doing this whole little thing. So that was kind of fun. But again, like, I don't think on the first day, I don't know if we even saw a character. Now we were kind of, busy going on that water slide and in the water and then eating. So, and it was a bit warm out there and the sun was kind of beating down. So the kids were over it by like 2:00.
was it the happiest island on earth, as I like to call it?
It was pretty nice being from Southern California and having grown up with beaches. Like, okay, it was nice. Like the water's very clean, very salty. So my son did not like that. And then the jellyfish larva between the beach, the water slide. I don't know if you know, or I'm sure you know, you have to swim to the water slide, right?
Right.
And they have from like, I think kind of the summer, there's jellyfish larvae, and they are very stingy. So they started to bother some of the people in the groups, and they have signs and they know about them. They even have a spray bottle of vinegar that you spray on yourself and kind of takes away the irritation after like 10 minutes. But yeah, I felt them in like my armpits and, kind of like some of the creases of my skin. They live in the seagrass. So as you're walking through the seagrass, they kind of come up. There's some stuff that you can buy on like Amazon that kind of prevents it, that you rub on like suntan or sunscreen.
So we had Castaway fun. Unfortunately, we could talk for hours about this cruise, and there is so many things, honestly, we could be talking about, because like so many of us want to know every single detail and the minutia of it all. But A, Steve will yell at us because we can't have our podcast be too long. And B, it is my bedtime. So we will have to unfortunately wrap it up. But like, how did disembarkation go? And like, did they ask you what time because I know they were going to distance people. So did they ask you what time you wanted to leave the ship? Did you have to do anything else special before you left?
Before we got on the ship and the safe portal, they told us that they were going to have another COVID screening as you got off the ship. So that you were going to have to go through another step and then you get cleared to leave, I guess. I don't know exactly what they were going to do. And then the night before, they announced that they're going to give you a luggage tag that you put on your luggage, and that'll tell you kind of when you depart from the ship. They would announce it in the morning, like, you're going to do the green Mickey, the yellow Donald or whatever. So that went really easy. I mean, there wasn't a lot of people. So like when it came time for us to go, we had breakfast in the morning, went back to our room, grabbed our backpacks, our carry-ons, and we basically went down to the atrium, took some more pictures, and like they said, okay, you can go. And they were letting people off in like groups of maybe 20. So everybody wasn't getting crowded at picking up their luggage and, whatever. We found out that morning that they actually were not going to do another COVID screening. So once we got off the ship, it was just pick up your luggage and go. And then since we only went to Castaway Cay, the immigration was just basically, they looked at your passport and that was it. They didn't scan anything. On my brother and sister, they didn't even like pull down their mask. They like kind of just were able to identify them from their paperwork. And then we were gone. And then we just took our shuttle back to the airport, and Bob's your uncle, you're done.
Wow. How was the line at customs?
No line. Like literally, like got our bags and walked right up to the gentleman who screened us. Now we got off like a little bit. It was amazing because I have the other time I went on a cruise, I have waited like an hour for, in like a hot atrium, waiting with everybody else packed in sardines. Like it was so spread out. Like I think people did a really good job of staying in their rooms or kind of away from gangway until they were called.
And did they tell you, like, before you went to breakfast to leave your bags in your room?
No. So we had kind of went early enough that we knew we'd be able to get back into our room before 9 o'clock and be, out of there. They wanted you off the boat by 9 o'clock, I believe.
Yeah, and that's normal. Like, they used to always, like, at 9:30, other ships would still be like, people would be rolling off at 9:45. On Disney Cruise Line, if you're still on at 9:15, that you think it's like the world is ending, that you're the last one standing, and that, you can't possibly still be on the ship anymore. So I
felt none of that pressure at all. I feel like we could have actually probably stayed there for another hour. Like I said, when we went actually down to a sit down breakfast, and there's a big table of 11. So we had the early seating for the sit down breakfast, and then the late seating was coming up. They set up another table. Like they had that kind of room that they were able to, if that other group of 11 that was the late seating came in, they were going to accommodate them.
Cannot wait to get back on.
How soon are you going?
I am going in 5 days now.
Nice.
Just booked. We just booked ourselves on the Dream. We were like, we need to get back on. And so we've decided that we are cruising. So Friday.
It was a lot of fun. Like, as you know, I'm sure. I mean, you guys are running the podcast, but like this is all of our first Disney cruise.
Aww.
And we were this close to doing the bounce back, which I probably still should have done anyway. I didn't do it because we have another vacation that we're kind of planning next year. And then we did talk about the annual passes. We live in Southern California for Disneyland, the new Keys.
Magic Key.
There you go. You going to get that, Chris?
We can't not do that. If you get the Magic Key within the first 66 days, they give you like a little welcome gift and stuff like that. And that's
that gift
really
with
their
purchase always gets you.
Yeah. That's really their way of getting the critical mass to make the program, as successful as the annual pass program was before. But yeah, no. So you've got some Disney spending happening regardless. But I do want to ask before we wrap up, I know we're running out of time, but do you have anything Disney-ish in the future? Any next steps for you? What's this new vacation you've got planned?
So it's actually my parents' anniversary, and they want to take my sister and I to Hawaii. Well, the family to Hawaii. So possibly Hawaii 2022. So we'll see. And as far as Disney, like once the Keys came back, I'm like telling the wife, like, for the four of us, if we get that third tier, second tier one, it's not too bad.
I think that this is literally Disney solving their biggest problem, which is with an 80% of your customers being annual pass holders, you really can't predict things like staffing and things like infrastructure. Whereas at Disney World, you know where people are going to be because they are tourists who have booked, certain number of day tickets and things like that. So I think it'll work out for us. I'm being optimistic.
I am worried about, because, I don't know about you, but I like the drop in to Disneyland where it'd be like 4 o'clock. So with having to make reservations and then worrying about that being at capacity is kind of the only drawback. And that's why I'm going to kind of like maybe wait till day 60 to get that, that free.
See what people have done.
And see what people have done, yes.
I will say
that makes sense.
That in the beginning of the reservation system and the crowds at Walt Disney World, you couldn't just make a last minute reservation. And like Steve was coming some random Sunday and we wanted to go to the Flower and Garden Festival together. And I could not get a pass to get to Epcot that day. And Epcot's like the easiest park to get into. And so I just had to keep like stalking and refresh, right? And then I eventually got it. But now I could make one if earlier today, if I had decided, I would like to go to Magic Kingdom tonight to watch the fireworks, I could make one earlier in the day and pop in. And it almost always is available now. So it just sort of, Hollywood Studios is one for annual pass holders. That's a little bit more work you have to do some planning for. But other than that, you can get in.
All right. Well, we are excited for you. We'll have a trip report for my trip to Hawaii coming out sometime. Maybe it'll already be out by the time this episode gets out, but I'm super excited for you to go to Hawaii.
I'm like, wait, have we recorded that yet? No, we have not. So I don't know.
No, I just got back. I just got back like 10 minutes ago. But yeah, so we'll get that out at some point. And then I'm excited for you and your family to go to Hawaii. But yeah, and I'm excited hopefully for you all to become Magic Key holders. Maybe we'll see you in the park, neighbor.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you very much for having me. And thank you for this podcast. It was very helpful in planning my trip a year plus ago. And one of the things was the sommelier's bin that you guys had talked about. I took advantage of that.
Did you?
Yes, we went up to Meridian. I picked up a couple glasses of wine for the wife and I, and went back down to our room.
That's fantastic. Even though you brought 4 bottles on, so you had a very good cruise. Okay.
Yeah, we were having a bottle a night.
I like it.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. And we can't wait to hear more about any of your future Disney cruising plans. And thanks for the feedback on the podcast. It warms our little hearts to know that this was useful information. And hopefully everyone else will learn about that sommelier bin as well.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot. Have a good night, everyone.
Well, that's going to wrap up our show today. I really want to thank Scott for coming on and sharing his and his family's experience as they sailed aboard the beautiful Disney Dream on the first sailing back out of Port Canaveral. And what a fun way to kick off cruising again out of the U.S. One of our favorite shows to do is when we get to talk to you cruisers out there who are experiencing Disney Cruise Line for the first time. And it's a little bit different than what a lot of us who have cruised with Disney before has experienced, as you can tell from some of the changes that they've made, but still the Disney magic is there, and Scott and his family had just a great time, and it was fun to bring his story out for all of you to hopefully cruise a little bit better as you get ready to sail in the Dream. And it has been announced that the Disney Fantasy will begin her sailings on September 11th out of Port Canaveral. They're shortening those cruises down from 7 to 4 nights. And of course, the magic continues over in Europe as she continues her staycation sailing. So I hope all these podcasts help all of you out there, whether you're sailing out of the US or the UK, to cruise a little smarter. Well, if you've enjoyed what you've been listening to, we sure would appreciate it if you'd pass it on to friends or fellow cruise enthusiasts who would enjoy our podcast. It helps the word get out a little bit better in the Disney cruising, and the travel industry in general. Also, if you have time to go over to iTunes and leave us a review, that helps get the word out as well. Each and every week, our show is brought to you by our Patreon supporters over at patreon.com/DCL podcast. You can go over there and find out all the information there to get a little bit of additional content each and every month. And we want to thank all of our Patreon supporters who help bring this show to you each and every week. Well, between now and our next show, if you and your family are heading out on a vacation, if you're heading out on one of the Disney cruise ships, on behalf of myself, Steve, Christy, and Chris, all of us here at the DCL podcast, we want to wish you to be well, stay safe, enjoy the time with each other, and we'll see you next time on the DCL podcast. The DCL podcast is not affiliated with the Disney Cruise Line, Walt Disney Company, Adventures by Disney, or Run Disney. All of the opinions expressed on our shows are those of the hosts and the guests who appear on the show. If you have any questions about any of these products, please contact the Walt Disney Company.